All right, so I'm going to tell you a story about my Emma. She is 3, almost 4, and she doesn't wipe her bottom yet. So when she's got to go poop, her mommy or her daddy does it for her. And it was a Sunday morning, and Sunday mornings in our house, it's crazy. Basically, we're getting ready to go to church, we got life group, we just got lots going on, and so in the mornings I'm very task oriented, got lots on my plate, gotta make sure we're all out on time. So this was one of those times where Emma pooped and I got to help her, so I took care of that and was on my way. A few minutes later she comes in and she's like, "Mommy, I dropped something in the toilet. And so I was like, okay, let's go see. So I look in the toilet and there's still poop and pee. So I'm like, oh my word, I don't say this to her, but I'm thinking, I don't have time for this. So me being the awesome wife that I am, oh dear, I go to my sleeping husband and I'm like, babe, can you help me? Emma just dropped something in there's poop and pee in the toilet, can you help me? And he's awesome, so he got up and he took care of it and totally saved the day. So why do I tell you this story? Because when she came to me and she said, "Mommy, I dropped something in the toilet," my reaction wasn't like, really? How did you let something drop in the toilet? I mean, you are 3. Okay, so that wasn't my reaction at all. I might have been a tiny bit just like, okay, this is kind of annoying, but not at all like expectation of perfection. I don't have an expectation that my kids are going to be perfect. We don't as parents. We don't expect that. So my question for us today is, why do we expect ourselves to be perfect? Why is that expectation that we should do everything right? And when we don't, we heap the shame on. All right, so when I was preparing for this week, for devotion, about a month out, I already had a chapter in a book that I was going to go over. And I read through the chapter and bleh, I just didn't have a connection, didn't feel like that's what I should share about. So I'm like, okay, God, if this isn't what I should talk about, what should I talk about? And I prayed about it and I felt like shame. We should really address shame. And I'm like, no, I deal with shame probably on a daily basis. I'm not going to talk about shame. So I was like, okay, since we've gotten that taken care of, let me pray and say, God, what do you want me to talk about? And shame just kept coming up. I mean, all the time. So I'm like, okay, let's talk about shame. So today we're going to hit shame head on. We are going to hit this thing and talk about it. Now, when I say the word shame, all of us know what that's like. I'm sure, we've all heard the term mommy guilt or mom guilt. We know how it feels to be ashamed. And so in the dictionary it says, a painful emotion caused by consciousness of guilt, shortcoming, or impropriety. And so I'm not going to really go into what a definition of shame is, because we are all very familiar. But what I do want to talk about is, where does it come from? Where does shame come from? Because a lot of times we don't know that we're under the influence of shame, that our life is being driven by shame. And so this can come from comparison. We compare ourselves to other moms, other parents. We look through our news feed, Instagram, whatever, social media, that super mom that's in our circle of friends that we feel like we're never gonna measure up to. It can come from growing up in a home that was shame-based. Maybe you had a parent that was angry all the time and you felt ashamed. Maybe your parent grew up with a parent who had high expectations of you at such a young age. Another place that shame can come from is abuse. Maybe you went through any sort of abuse and it caused shame in the moment, but it also continues to remind you and it causes shame now. Maybe relationships cause shame. Our culture can elicit shame just because we don't measure up to everything that we see. That's actually artificial mostly, but it elicits shame in us. It causes shame. And another place that's so obvious is just doing something wrong. So I get angry at my son and I feel ashamed. I feel guilty. And in that moment of shame, that small little time where I feel guilty and ashamed after doing something wrong, that's when it's okay. If it brings me to forgiveness, if it brings me to ask for forgiveness, you know what, I'm sorry for being angry with you. And then if it brings me to deal with the issue, why did I get angry in the first place? That's okay shame. But when shame is not okay is when it becomes part of our identity. When it gets so much to the point where it starts steering our lives, it starts bringing our lives away from the person that God created us to be. When it starts steering our our lives away from having that abundant life that God said that he came to give us. When it starts steering our lives away from freedom, when we're constantly under shame. Let's say that you have this person that you admire and you would love to get to know, and they ask you for coffee. And because you're so ashamed, because you're like, no, I don't want them to really know you. I mean, no way, there's no way. So you say no. Well, you are giving up an opportunity, an amazing opportunity, where both of you could probably benefit each other. Or let's say this summer sometime, your family wanted to go to the beach or the lake or a pool, and you're like, I can't, dude. Like, you're so ashamed of your body, you didn't even go, or you didn't get out in the water and play with them. Shame causes you to not enjoy this moment that's right in front of you because there's this constant chatter. It hinders you from the life that God gave you, and that's the bottom line. And the absolute root of shame is feeling like I will never measure up. I'm never going to measure up to that person's expectations, God's expectations, my expectations, or I'm never going to measure up. And that's the root of it, and it hinders us. And so what I want to encourage us all with today is that we're not meant to live like that. We don't have to live like that anymore. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a visual, okay? Kind of. Let's pretend that I have a backpack on. And the backpack that I'm carrying, it represents all the shame from my past. Maybe a shame-based home, abuse that I went through, whatever. But it represents the shame that I brought with me. And then I have these two bags that I carry on my arms, big bags, big rectangle bags. And they represent all the mommy guilt, the comparison, that, oh, I'm not doing it right, all of that. And then let's picture that I have this grocery bag, this reusable grocery bag, and that's the legitimate, the things that I did wrong. So I'm carrying around all these bags, and my kids go, hey, Mommy, let's go out and play. And I take all my bags with me and I play. Well, how free am I? Am I really enjoying that moment to the fullest? Or going out on a date with my husband, oh, I love you, you're so amazing. You know, you can't. I can't dance, I can't jump, I can't be free to be me with all this baggage. And that is exactly, maybe you can't see the bags, but that's how it is emotionally. That's how it is in our head. That's how it is spiritually. It just hangs on us, and it's excess baggage that we don't need. And that's what I want to encourage us with today. Somebody paid a very high price for us to be free of that and not be living in that. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about what Jesus did on the cross and how he went through all of this shame so that I don't have to carry all those bags. I can be free to be me. I can jump around. I don't care how big I am or how small I am. Jesus paid the price for me so that I don't have to carry all of that. And so the cross in and of itself was created to be a shame-filled experience. So it says in the Bible that Jesus was despised and rejected of men. Just a week prior to this experience, they were all saying, oh, you're the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And the very next week, they had him up there on the cross. You think you're the King of Kings. They were mocking him. They were destroying his reputation, and he experienced that shame. It says that shame leads to abandonment. And while he was on that cross, all of the shame of all of us, of you, of Julie, of all of the moms, of all of us parents, was heaped upon him. And he was like, my God, why have you forsaken me? And in that moment, the shame of abandonment he experienced. There was a portion where they were mocking him, and it says he was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and he opened not his mouth. And so he knew who he was, and yet he chose not to argue with them. He chose not to say a word. And then the most shame I could possibly think of is to be absolutely exposed for the world to see. And yet he was on that cross, totally naked, exposed. And so Jesus went through all of this shame. And the reason why I'm telling you this right now is because of his reaction to this shame. And I want us to really pay attention to how Jesus reacted. He experienced all the shame, more shame than we could ever imagine. And this is how he reacted. In Hebrews 12:2, it says, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, for the joy set before us, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, despising its shame. So let me just tell you, that's basically like Jesus was saying, bring it on. Bring the shame on. Let me have it. Let me have your shame. Let me have all these mamas who are comparing themselves, all their shame. Let me have all of Julie's shame. Let me bear the shame of all the world so that they can be free. Bring it on. I got this. I'm the authority, and I will show you who's the authority. And so he died on the cross that day with our shame, but he didn't stay there, because a couple days later, he rose from the grave and he said, I do have authority. All the shame that you put on my mamas that I love, that's a lie. They don't have to live under that anymore, because I rose from the dead, and they can be free. And so you can be free. I can be free. We don't have to live under the chatter. That is just keeping us from being who God created us to be. Shame doesn't have to permanently cripple us. It doesn't have to permanently destroy us. It's meant to be abandoned. It's meant to be cast away when Jesus rose from the dead. And so I wanted to give you a little encouragement. This verse from Isaiah is directly from God's heart to ours. And he says this in Isaiah 61:3, I will take the ashes of humiliation and the ashes of shame, and I will give you instead the beauty of a garland. I will take the oil of gladness and give it to you instead of mourning. I will give you garments of praise instead of fainting. And hear what God says. I am going to give you something to replace that awful shame, and it will be put away. Put away, because Jesus rose from the grave so that you, mama, you can march on. You can live free without all those bags. You can jump in the river with your kids. You can go dance with your husband. You can go out with that friend that you find so inspiring, that you would love to learn from that person. And you never know, they might be learning from you too. You can live free of shame. And so I just want to pray for all of us that we would remember that, and we would learn to live free of shame, because Jesus paid a high price for that. And so Jesus, we just come to you right now, and we pray that you would just silence that chatter, that we would begin to move in the freedom that you paid. You paid such a high price for that. And so I pray that we would be able to move into that freedom, that we would walk in that freedom, that we would be able to know without a shadow of a doubt that once that shame starts to talk to us, that once that shame starts to be heavy on our chest, that we say, no, Jesus paid the price for me. And so I thank you so much for what you did on the cross. I thank you that you have abundant life available for all of us, free of shame, so that we can be the mom that you created us to be. In your name, amen.